How you doing, babe? I hope you're well. As for me, I've been dealing with a lot of stuff personally, and it's kind of made me realize that we don't talk about internalized trauma as much as we should. Personally, I had a weird 2025. I've had a lot of things happen to me back to back, and it caused me to look at myself in a certain way where I tried to find a way to justify some of the stuff that I've been through and trying to make it my fault instead of like really looking at the external things that I've had to deal with that led to me having a really, really bad year. So that inspired me to make this podcast because I wanted to make something that dealt with trauma and dealt with just trying to heal from some of the things that we deal with in life and also addressing some of our personal mental health struggles that we go through every day and just trying to make our lives as best as possible, considering that we're in a situation where we're constantly bombarded with negative news and we're constantly bombarded with just the most evilest stuff that we've ever seen in at least our lifetimes. So I decided to make this podcast to deal with my personal struggles and hopefully someone who can relate to what I'm going through or what I've faced before can actually find comfort in it, that they're not alone. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I suffer from chronic depression. So there are times that I'm just going to be depressed no matter what I do. I'm on medication for it, and there may be times that my medication doesn't work, or it may actually numb me a lot. And you also have to be on the correct medication as well. I've been on the wrong medication before. It just makes you completely blank. And it just kind of, I guess you could say, it kind of makes you feel like you don't really connect to everything that's around you. You're just numb. And I didn't want that. So I'm on medication now that currently makes me feel kind of stable. I've been on it for at least a year now, and it's been working for me. And I'm happy to be able to be more stable. But 2025 was a very hard year for me, and I'm dealing with the ramifications of what happened. And internalized trauma is when you go through something and you try to find ways to justify it by putting the blame on yourself. And I've tried to do that recently. I've kind of started doing that, and I'm trying to get out of it. So I want to just really discuss it. So I started 2025 off coming out of the closet, and I wasn't really in the closet. If I'm being honest with you, it's kind of obvious that I wasn't straight. I consider myself heteroflexible. I love women, and I'm more attracted to anyone who looks more feminine or presents themselves more feminine. But it's not limited to just women. I'm pretty much open. And I'm mostly attracted to feminine traits than anything else. So I came out of the closet. It was just kind of me saying what everyone kind of already knew anyway, because, you just look at me. And that's how I started things off. I had to process that, and that was fine. But I think that, along with other things, have made me more of a person that people might target. And I found myself in situations throughout the year where I had to have conflict with multiple people in my professional life that I didn't want to have conflict with. So I lost a job that I thought that I was going to be at forever. I was very much in love with the job, the people I was around and everything. And I found myself being targeted by someone, and I tried to stand up against them. It's something that's been happening for a year, but it got a little worse in 2025. And standing up for myself eventually led to me losing my job. And that really sucked. And that was very hard to deal with, very hard to process. I went through a long space of just being depressed, being in bed, not knowing what to do in my life because I had this whole plan and the plan fell apart. But I did eventually find another job that I thought would be good for me, but that fell apart as well after a few months because I found myself in a situation where I was working with an alpha male who wanted to kind of assert his dominance over everyone. And we both kind of ended up having issues with each other because he wasn't targeting me. He was kind of just treating everyone like that. But I'm just someone you can't bully. So it just kind of ended up being an issue. I had to leave that job. And then I went to another job. And that one ended with me being fired for discriminatory reasons. I'll just leave it at that. So I had those three things happen back to back, and just dealing with a lot of verbal abuse and just dealing with a lot of things going on over and over and over every day, not being very clear on how my day is going to go. You know, is it going to go well or is it going to fall apart? Am I going to be targeted by someone? It's it's just such a mess, and it really did mess with my mental health. And I found myself in a situation where I wanted to make sense of it. I need to make sense of it, because if I don't make sense of it, these things are just happening and I don't have any control over it. When you're dealing with trauma, the hardest thing to process is the fact that certain things are just out of your control. There's things you can't deal with. And if you're a person like me who looks for ways to improve yourself, which is something I've been working on for years, trying to improve myself, trying to make myself a better person, trying to be the best version of myself, then of course you're going to find situations where you can't really do anything to change the outcome, but you really want to change the outcome and you really feel like you should have control over what's happening. So it's easy to fall to the trap of just blaming yourself and seeing what you could have done differently to avoid the outcome of what happened. And it really weighed on me for a very long time, me trying to find out what is it about me and what can I change to avoid these situations in the future. And even though I talk to people who are very much aware of some of the stuff I went through in 2025, it seems like I keep getting told that it's not my fault. It's not something I can control. When you're so into self-improvement, it's hard to go through things that you can't control. You just kind of have to accept that you can't control it, and that certain things are going to happen because of other people, and it's out of your reach. It's not anything you can do about it. So after some thinking and just really trying to realize that it's nothing I could have done that was different in all three situations, that it was out of my control, I have to accept that, no matter what happens in life, you always have to keep moving forward, even if it's difficult to do. And it's very hard to do. It's very hard to not internalize these things, to internalize your failures or perceived failures or things that happen to you where you really believe that you have full control over everything that happens to you. But you have to look at it as we're living in a certain time where people aren't that great, if we're being honest, and there's nothing we do about other people. All thing we can do is control ourselves, and we can just do the best we can for ourselves and be the best version of ourselves that we can. And that is regardless of if anyone else agrees with us or if anyone else thinks that we're worthy of being loved and worthy of the same things that everyone else is worthy of. But we are. And that's regardless of how anyone else feels about you or how they feel you should live your life or if you should change who you are. If you're happy with who you are, if you're confident with who you are, then it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't really matter what anyone says. And anyone else who disagrees with that, it's more of their problem than yours. And that's more of my experience. But if you want to go broader and get away from just my personal 2025 year and what happened with me and all, and just talk about in general how things are, it sucks that people do incredibly cruel things to you and leave you with trauma that you have to process on your own. It sucks that no one takes responsibility for the things they do. And being a person who tries to take responsibilities for the things you do, it comes down to you really just taking on the blame for having to heal from the trauma that someone else gave you. And it's horrible that someone else gave you trauma and they just get to live the rest of your life as if it never happened. And they leave you with it to process and to go through and try to figure things out on your own. And it's a lot easier to blame yourself for some of the things that's happening to you. Because as a person who wants to own up to your mistakes and be better, you're going to want to tackle these problems in a way that you could control because you're used to controlling it. But now these things are your fault. And There's not a lot of things you could do differently. In fact, some of the things you may go through are very unique to you and your situation you're going through. And there's no roadmap or no plan or no kind of, tutorial to walk you through what you're going through. It just is what it is. And it sucks because you shouldn't have to go through those things. You shouldn't have to go through trauma that's been inflicted on you by someone else and be left to deal with it. Unfortunately, that's kind of how things are. And you got to remember not to internalize these things. It's not your fault that someone else treats you horribly. It's not your fault that someone else hurts you or abuses you or treats you a certain way that makes you feel lesser than. You are not lesser than. It's the way they're treating you. They're not treating you the way they should. And it's not your fault that you're not being treated the way you should be treated. It's not your fault that anyone else sees you differently and don't think you should have the same kind of rights or privileges or the same kind of life that everyone else has. It's not your fault. It's just outside things that you can't control that are coming into your life and leaving you to clean up the mess that they leave. No, I'm not saying that you're completely blameless for some of the actions that may lead to certain things in your life happening. We have to take responsibility for our own actions, but we also got to make sure that we're not taking responsibility for other people's actions and what they've done and how they've treated us and not internalize it and make ourselves feel like we're the failure in this. It's easy to blame yourself and feel like a failure, and it just eats at you. It does eat at you. You're constantly think of ways you could have done things differently. You're constantly think of ways you could change the outcome if you would have done such and such differently. What if I would have just let this person bully me for a whole year, right? I didn't speak up for myself because that's what happened. I was trying to be peaceful with someone who kept escalating things. What if the next job I let this alpha male guy just intimidate me and everyone else and just bully us constantly? What would have happened? What if I would have been more submissive to the person who was discriminating against me? What if I would have took away my own human right to be treated like everyone else? It just allowed people to bully me and treat me like lesser than. Then would it have made me happier? Would I have been in a better situation? No. Those things should not have happened. There's nothing I could have changed. But the truth is, no, you could have made your parents treat you better. You could have made that one spouse or partner not abuse you. You couldn't have made your job not discriminate against you or the person who assaulted you to not assault you. There's nothing you could do to change the outcome of someone else's actions when this trauma was thrown upon you. It wasn't a choice. It's not a decision you made for yourself. It's not a bad decision you made. It's not your fault that this trauma was thrown on you. All thing you could do is control your life. Own up to the mistakes you make. Do the best you can for yourself and for others. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Be the best version of yourself. That is all you could do. That's all you can focus on. Everyone else and everyone else's problems and everything else they bring to you, that's them. And they should own up to it, you know? You can only control the things that you actually have the ability to control. And because of that, you shouldn't beat yourself up that things have happened that are beyond your control. But you can't just sit there and wallow in your sorrow and depression and just feel like nothing matters anymore and that you're worthless, or let them make you feel like you're worthless and you don't belong and you don't deserve good things and you don't deserve to be treated well. That's not true. Moving forward is difficult. It's easy to just lay in bed and not really deal with any of your problems and all. And I'll admit that there are times that I do think that the best thing for you to do is to lay in bed and just watch something that gives you comfort, do something that makes you feel happy, be around people or pets that give you joy. But at the same time, you need to get back out there. You need to go out there and live your life. You can't just let all of this just weigh you down and make you feel like you don't deserve to be out there. You don't deserve to be happy. So I want to make it clear that I'm not discussing the idea of someone else putting the blame on anyone else. I just want to say that sometimes things are not our fault. And people who own up to things, people who don't put the blame on everyone else, and people who do take responsibility for their actions, they have problems dealing with the fact that some things are just not in their control. And that's kind of what's happening with me. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because it's something that we all have to deal with and something that happens to a lot of us. And currently at this time, I think a lot of people are upset with the fact that they're being treated a certain way because of who they are. And it makes them feel like because of who they are, they deserve to be treated that way. And it makes them build this self-hatred and this depression towards the life that they've built for themselves that made them happy, but outside forces made them feel negative about it. I just want to say it's not fair. What happened to you, what you're going through, wherever the struggle you're dealing with personally, wherever trauma you're trying to process that was put upon you without your permission, without you having any kind of involvement in it, it's not your fault, but you can't wallow in it. You can't blame yourself constantly. Baby, you got to get up and you got to get back out there because healing takes work. Hard work. But you got to do it. Always moving forward. You got to always move forward no matter what. So I hope you're doing well. And wherever you're going through, I hope it gets better. I hope it gets easier. And I just want you to know that you are loved. No matter what happens in life, you are loved. You are deserving of love. And in a world where cruelty and meanness is basically the default, you're just doing your best. You take care, babe. Love you. Be good.